Welcome, fellow detectives, to another video on this channel, and today we are talking once more about the researcher's first murder. And because I have done all the puzzles and all the tiny bits and pieces of this murder mystery, I can now kind of dive into a review for you. And today we're gonna have a look at all the picture puzzles. We're gonna talk about the mechanics and how they worked, in fact. And I try to explain a little bit, so obviously this episode contains spoilers. Be aware of that. If you need some tips, there are plenty of videos on my channel about all the different parts of this murder mystery puzzle, so check these videos out. I'm gonna link them in the info cards throughout the video, so you can click on them and just watch the videos as far as you need. Maybe you just need a tiny little hint, but that's what this channel is for. So here are some hints and clues about the researcher's first murder and all the mechanics kind of reviewed. And by the way, thanks to all of you who subscribed to the channel already. And if you haven't, consider this, because I'm gonna talk about the researcher's first murder, Kane's Jawbone, and many other murder mysteries coming up, probably. But for now, these two puzzles are my business, and because I solved both of them, I try to provide you some help and guidance throughout the puzzles so you can solve it yourself. If you've clicked on the video and don't know what the researcher's first murder is, it's this tiny booklet with 100 postcards. And these postcards have everything on it that you need to solve this murder mystery. Text sites as well as picture sites. That's why we are talking about postcards. For example, they look like this on the picture side and like this on the text side. And if you combine everything, you'll get the answer to the story: who killed the person that was in a sealed room with no murder weapon and no extra entry or passage where you could leave the room. I think that basically sums up the plot. And along the way, you need to identify all the murderers and the victims for 10 specific murders. Let's start with this kind of postcards. And this is the Blind Love set. Why is it called Blind Love? Because it is related to a story that is called Blind Love. And we can completely ignore it as it is stated on another postcard, because this is a collage of certain images from this story, but the story itself doesn't matter at all. Your task for this set is to connect people who killed who and kind of arrange something on one of the cards that is related to the set and gives you some clues. And with all the string connected, it gives you a piece of the final address of the final murder that you need to solve. What I liked is that all the pieces that were kind of introduced to you for this piece of the puzzle, everything was used. That was great. But the biggest critique that I have is that the characters kind of looked the same in some images, and so it was not that easy to connect the dots. But as I said, if you need more help on that, here is the video linked in the info card. Just check it out. I even put like a fictional story on top of it, so it kind of explains what happens. This set, the Venn diagrams, were kind of difficult because as a non-native speaker, you probably have difficulties to kind of come up with the right words, because that is crucial in this part. And ultimately, you have to figure out what these words are, as well as the images around them, and form the final solution that is also part of the final address. To start with something positive, it was fun to rearrange the cards and kind of think about how they could fit together. And it was quite easy because it was 10 cards, including this one, the final solution. And you could arrange like 3 times this pattern, giving you 3 Venn diagrams to solve initially, and then a second layer, I guess, with the ultimate card. Basically, it was exactly straightforward, although it was kind of difficult to find the right words, but still, it was okay mechanically wise. So once you knew kind of what to look for, it came clear. But I mentioned it already, for me as a non-native speaker, I had difficulties finding the right words or kind of accepting the solution because I wasn't familiar with the term I was looking for as what it is. And one category of the Venn diagrams was oddly specific, and I don't know how people kind of got into that, actually. The set that I probably disliked the most was the music set, which was about images from historic or ancient buildings and mosaics, etc. And they all featured kind of lines and heads around those lines. There's also a connection to the planetary system, so you need to take this into account when you solve this piece of the puzzle. But in fact, it is about music, and that was kind of pain for me. I didn't like it that much because you need to arrange the melody, etc. You need to find the reference it belongs to, and I just didn't like this mechanic, and it was like too off for me and too special, probably. And I don't want to say more about that. If you want to know more, check the video out in the info box. Right next is probably the most important puzzle to understand the text sides and the story, and to kind of give you some help of locating where everything happens, and that is the maze set. I highly recommend starting with this set when you try to solve this. Yeah, that tip comes late, because it is the set that you can identify like 90% of quite easily on the internet. Your task is to connect all the lines so it forms a maze that is from start to end connected. And if you take this blue tiles card, it was entitled blue tiles card in Reddit, so yeah, I just go with that. You know how to arrange the pattern of the cards, and that makes it more easy to connect the pieces. Due to the printing and the cutout of the cards, this might be a little inaccurate at some point, but still it works and it is plausible. I liked about this mechanic that it was kind of easy to follow. The first step to arrange the maze was pretty easy, and once you knew the blue tiles card, it also helped with kind of connecting the cards and get the piece of the solution that you want to achieve. Although that particular piece of the solution was kind of weird and you don't understand it until you solve the text, I guess. One of the most entertaining things was to watch the movies related to these characters, so the caricature set, and you always have a person and something that could kill someone. And each of these cards is related to a single movie. If you've watched like 2 or 3 movies, you'll get the pattern behind these cards, which is easy, but for some cards, it isn't that easy to find the corresponding movie. You have to do a lot of Googling, maybe know some trivia about movies, but in the end, this whole puzzle was kinda easy, and the confirmation is on each card as well of what you're looking for. So there is a second layer to it that follows the same pattern, and that was I loved it because you knew what you were looking for and it worked exactly. It fits to the text, and that is, I don't want to spoil that, but once you understand certain things about the text, you'll understand the second layer, and it comes to your mind very, very quickly. You could probably use ChatGPT in this part, but you may have to be lucky. I got kind of lucky because I assumed the right solution, although I did not understand the pattern fully. And once I understood it, it was completely clear. Now for the map set. The map set is, I'm gonna say, probably the easiest puzzle because everything, and I repeat that, everything you need is right up those cards. Obviously, it is part of a map and you need to rearrange all the cards of the map set to form a very common country. Or should I say more than one country? More than one country. With all the blue being water, it is kind of easy to connect things, and you have to overlap. That is very important. And in the end, you have to decide between 2 options. Go for the left one, because that's the right answer. And it's pointing, actually pointing towards one of the obvious kind of solutions of what part of the address you are looking for, and it gives you quite clearly an answer. I've talked about it in this video. If you need help on that or just more information, just check this out. And now we're doing some math, and that was very definitely not my favorite part of this puzzle. But let's start easy with the color set. The color set features some Asian people, this white stripe that comes into play later. I have another video on that. And they are all holding kind of a card with something, with an element, with a flower, with a plus or a minus, and something on it, an element. They have all different colors, and that's why it's called the color set. And I said you're gonna need to do some math. You need to calculate a color. I won't spoil too much. I've got a video about that, and you can watch that instead if you need more helps or tips and clues. But it felt a little difficult to get into the mechanic, though in the end it was completely explainable and understandable because it followed a very clear pattern. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you add or subtract in this or that order, you're gonna end up with the same solution, but beware, the solution requires a different flower. Let's just leave that as a hint. The other thing that involved some math is the clock set. And that was so brainy, and so many people asked questions about it, and I got so many messages specifically about the clocks. As a little tip, this red, I got the blue one, but the red clock holds the key to this mechanic. If you arrange all the clocks together and you join the words where the C meets, like in the middle, you get epicycles. And that's a very important part of the puzzle, because if you combine it with the green clock, Wild Laughter à Paris, which is weird, and that is so difficult to pronounce. And remember that these two letters are changed, so it's RE instead of ER. You've got everything that you need to find the right person that belongs to epicycles. If you Google epicycles, you probably come up with this part of the solution. But this was clever. I don't want to explain this mechanic, but that was kind of clever and I liked it. And gonna talk about this, a similar thing in the next set that we want to discuss the mechanic of. But the math behind it to kind of calculate the epicycles and the result of that was really, really annoying. It felt like you have a lot to do and you calculated stuff and you corrected formulas, etc. And there are tools for that. But in the end, the solution was definitely disappointing to me. Let me know in the comments if you share the same opinion about this, but I felt disappointed. Maybe you did too. If I counted correctly, there are 2 sets remaining, and the one that I mentioned, kind of, is De ma Galerie, which features a similar mechanic with the translation and like a nice word play, kind of. And the important part is the walrus down there in the logo. If you combine that gallery belonging to this guy with all the images, you'll get something that also belongs to this guy and French. I'll leave you with that. There's a video, you know the drill. That was a mechanic that I really liked. It was plausible, that was good. And last but not least, another very, very good example of puzzle mechanics, the stained glass set. All these windows feature similar elements, and there is also a window that appears more often, which is this colored rainbow stained glass window. And you have to iterate certain steps. So this was one of the puzzles that was kind of high effort compared to others, like the map set, for example, because you iterated a couple of times until you find something that kind of looks like something that you could lay out with these cards and the shape. And if you Google image this word, you'll get somewhere. And if you combine it with the other elements of this card, you'll end up with another piece of the final address. I like this mechanic because everything you need is right on these cards. What I did not like is that it is also very specific for the area we are looking for. So once again, if you're not a native British person, probably, you're gonna have a harder time solving this piece of the puzzle because you won't get into the first iteration. Still, it was very good and I liked it, and it was one of the fun parts for me because once you cracked the code, you could iterate once more until you ended up with a plausible solution. And a tip for that, the solution to the stained glass set is written down in the text. Although not for the book versions, like in German it is called Salomons Urteil, Salomon's Verdict. And I compared these two kind of editions. If you want to know more about that, there's also a video. But if you can solve the picture side because you have the original puzzle, that was one of the fun parts. And that was kind of easily solvable. But still there were some people reaching out to me to get some tips on that, which is cool. Just send me a DM and I'll try to respond and help you if you need the help, or just comment down below. All in all, the mechanics were pretty solid, I guess. There were some that were liked better than others, and the math part probably wasn't that popular, though still most of the mechanics were very well implemented, very well created, and worked throughout the puzzle. And that's just the mechanics for the picture sides. There were mechanics in the text that we're gonna discuss in another video, and they were also very good. I really like the amount of effort that John Finnemore put into all these things, and because I tried it myself, it isn't that easy to come up with solid mechanics that haven't been overused. For example, like a simple code that you just need to apply so you can decode something. That's it for today's video. I think I reviewed all the picture postcard sets. If you need more help, just check out the playlist. I linked it on my channel everywhere. Share the video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment where you need some more help, and I try to do another video on that. Stay tuned. Hope you are well. Bye.